When you open your season and you're building against a supposed Super Bowl contender in the Steelers and you just drop a 33-3 bomb on them, it's just one of those things where you just got to say the Patriots are still
All right,
the best.
I've grown tired with your Patriots analysis.
Good,
of
please.
course, they're number one.
Yes, please.
But let's get to number two, because that's where things can get exciting, right?
Yeah, with the Rams, I believe that the Panthers are a good team. So did we see the best of the Los Angeles Rams in week one? No. But going on the road, being able to close that game out, what we saw from Todd Gurley at the end, getting that first down, I think that the Rams are a team that's going to get better, and they start with a win, so they keep their spot at number 2 for me.
All right, so you have the two teams that played in the Super Bowl earlier in 2019. They stay there because they both win. So, Cynthia, as we look at the top 8, 1 through 8 of the Dan Hanzus Power Rankings, let's lean on one of those teams that might be able to knock off the Rams at number 2 in the NFC. I'll take the Saints off the board. Anybody else that you like to slide in there?
Philadelphia Eagles. Anybody? The third best one in the NFC. For me, they're actually the number 1 NFC team. Is when it comes to, like, it's going to be the Saints and then the Eagles, and the Eagles are most likely to make the playoffs in their division. Like, the Eagles, to me, especially, you saw them get better as the game progressed, right? Sure. 92.3% on third down. That'd be Carson Wentz in this game. That's 12 of 13, a perfect passer rating. Third down, extremely predictive, an area that was a problem for Wentz at the beginning of last season, 92.3%. That's pretty good.
Are you getting judgy of my power rankings right off the bat here?
I think so.
Listen, I'm just mad that
That's okay. I mean, I'll give you a shot at redemption here, Dan.
Okay.
How about you take a selection? If you want to say, you know what, maybe there were some cracks in that Rams armor that we saw against the Panthers. If there was a team that you think would unseat them, it would be?
I love the Vikings. I love them entering the season, and nothing I saw in week one makes me think that they're not going to be a big-time contender. And they have all the recipe for a big season. Dalvin Cook is that breakout player. Kirk Cousins, he only threw 10 passes in week one, which is not going to happen again. But asking him to be a facilitator more than the hero is very wise. They have the 2 big receivers on the outside, and a great defense, a great home field advantage. Watch out for the Vikings.
Well, and I believe, because I'm just not this pretty fish, there's a little bit of a brain in there for some football analysis. I will just share with the viewers, really to save you from the Twitter comments. How about the Cowboys, huh? How about them Cowboys? Because you look at what they can do at both lines of scrimmage, dominate up front offensively, dominate up front defensively. Dak Prescott, with all the pressure in the world, because he seems like he's the only guy in Dallas that didn't get a contract extension, goes out and likely, and if you believe what old Jarrah said after the game, earned himself an extra $2 to $3 million a year after you threw out a number, 93 point. What was your number?
92.3.
Yeah, you know what mine is?
Carson Wentz.
Well, 92.3 here in LA is the beat, and that's where you can hear some slow jams from 3 to 5 p.m. But the number I'm going to throw out is 158.3. That is a perfect passer rating. Dak throws those 4 touchdowns, looks great. Doesn't need a whole lot from Zeke Elliott, so I'd say maybe the Cowboys.
That's a good one, and I'm annoyed because of your brilliant football mind, you have dwarfed mine, because the Cowboys are the team. When you think about Zeke also, he's a step slow right now. He's working his way into shape. The Cowboys are super dangerous, and yes, Dallas fans got mad at me for not putting them up higher.
Oh, they're coming.
They have to deal
They
with
always
it.
get mad.
And I welcome people to bring the heat to
it's coming.
Kansas. I don't care. I eat your madness. So that's where I'm at.
You know what we call that, Dan?
What?
We call that foreshadowing, because that's going to be coming a little bit later
I love it.
in the show. All right, Cynthia, because you have got that big brain, let's go feel versus real and what your top 5 looks like.
Well, when I'm looking at my top 5, first 2, Patriots, Saints, we kind of went over there. Chiefs, no one gets any love for the Chiefs. They had a huge win. I mean,
sure.
The Jags had some interesting problems
A little
against
bit of an
them.
issue
But yeah, Eagles, the comeback
we'll
win.
address that later.
Yeah, we'll address that later. Eagles, obviously, they started a little slow, but they didn't have the preseason kind of normal stuff. I think they're kind of following that Patriots model of showing us nothing in the preseason, so that kind of edged them up.
Let's focus on that number 2, though, the Saints, because there's a lot to like there. Obviously, a team that feels as though they should have been included in the Super Bowl last season ahead of the Rams, and a heck of a comeback victory to get that win over the Texans.
Look, that's a great, strong start to the season, and then they have it followed up this week with a game here in Los Angeles against the Rams, so they are not starting slow in this season at all, which just means that they're going to get easier games kind of down the stretch and potentially be even more dangerous in their division, because they're going to get kind of the lull in their schedule doesn't start until a couple more weeks. So for me, watching them come out strong, kind of go through some of the adversity, I'm worried about their secondary a bit. Their pass defense is dicey, and that is a true concern that I'm going to be tracking. But This is a team that knows how to come back, and they know how to keep going. And their offense, uncharacteristic red zone interception for Drew Brees, not going to happen going forward.
So she has Saints too. You have Rams. Defend your selection.
Like I said, I just think that people get on the Rams for not being dominant and blowing away teams in week one. But I think the Panthers are a very good team, and I think the Rams are going to get better as they start to get more in a groove when they get home. Goff did not have a good week one, but I think Jared Goff's going to be just fine. And Gurley, I love the way they used Gurley. They kind of worked him back in the mix. We saw those old bursts. He almost had 100 yards on limited carries. I think the Rams are going to be okay. Aaron Donald had a very quiet game. J.J. Watt got shut out. Donald came close. So week one's a little funky, a little bit weird, and I just felt I didn't feel right dropping the Rams at this point.
The other thing to point out, too, is so many people get excited about draft picks and, they drafted it back in the third round. People forget how important Malcolm Brown was to this team, and he signs an offer sheet. He could have gone to Detroit, and instead the Rams keep him. And I think you see that as well, that they do have some depth at that running back position. And as you said, Gurley's still extremely effective on limited carries. All right, Cynthia.
I was a little concerned with the Rams. The one thing that I'm interested to see how it plays out is their O-line. I'm always, I'm an O-line truther with all of this. The interior of their O-line did change significantly. Yes, the center had a good first game, but I'm really concerned to see what happens going forward when you get the likes of Cam Jordan. You get this Saints defense this week coming right at that O-line. That's what I'm watching in this one to track who will be number 2 going forward.
Speaking of those Rams, let's get to our first tweet of the week. From old J-Dub Jr.
Thanks for including me and Matt Money Smith on this, J-Dub.
That's okay. I don't want to be included. Hey, please, keep me out of your mentions. These are all answers. They're
Very
his
sloppy in the mentions.
So they look totally suspect. D looks bad. O is vanilla. Has the league caught up to McVay and Phillips?
I like vanilla.
Seems like Wade's been doing it for a long enough time that they would have caught up to
him
already.
He's like 70 years old.
I mean, you could make the McVay case. It was interesting, though. They ran, 11 personnel pretty much exclusively all last season, and we didn't see as much of it in that first game. But I thought you hit it on the head, Dan. It's fun. Week one is funky.
Yeah, and Sean McVay is going to have to evolve. He's had the 2 years where he kind of took the league by storm. I just trust him. I think he's just such a young, gifted offensive mind. And Wade's Wade. JW the second, maybe the second. He's a junior. I think you have to give these coaches the benefit of the doubt because they're that good. That's one of the great advantages the Rams have.
Would you like
the coaching staff?
Would you like a little nugget real quick?
Yeah.
So Junior, you're named after your father. His exact name. The second, you could be named after anybody in the lineage. So you could be the second. It could be your great-great-grandfather that you've been named after. And that's how it.
I didn't know that.
There you go, a little something for you to take
Ancestry,
away.
are you going to come sponsor us next time? There we go.
Exactly right. All right, another tweet. Eagles should have dropped. Changed my mind.
Did you watch the second half? Case on. I mean, honestly, they were, again, funky week one. The first half, Case Keenum is going up and down the field with the Redskins. By the second half, the Eagles were as good as advertised on both sides of the ball. And Carson Wentz, to me, he is, I don't know if my NFL.com write-up, if I picked MVP Carson Wentz. I should have if I didn't, because I really love him, and I love what D-Jax brings to that offense, blowing the tops off defenses. I think the Eagles looked great in week one, and don't worry about the first 2 quarters. It's an hour.
Division opponents are always a weird conundrum for every team in every division. So especially to start off the season, we had no idea what to expect from Washington at all. You see some great things. You see Terry McLaurin, who, not a ton of people were really hot on Terry McLaurin prior to the season starting. So you're seeing some different looks. Of course, that happens always. Again, division opponents, I'm not worried about that first half.
Speaking of which, I guess my case for the Eagles, and it's too late. Deshaun Jackson finally gives them a deep threat. They've been trying for 2 years now, and bang, there you go, 2 touchdowns. All right, Pats fan, pretty sure Cowboys should be ranked above the Saints.
I like that he characterized that he's a Pats fan first, just to flex on you a little bit. You know what I mean?
Right,
I'm
no
with
bias.
you on number 1, but, number 2.
He thinks the Cowboys should be ahead of the Saints? All right, the Cowboys are now ahead of the Saints.
No!
I can't do that?
No!
Is that how this works?
Listen, that's why I ditched the getting loose Dan Andrews, because you got too loose with it last week. You can't let these people influence you. Well, it was a display of sheer domination down in Miami by the Ravens. They said Lamar Jackson couldn't throw the ball, yet there he was, spinning it all over the place to the tune of darn near 60 points, yet Dan Andrews has them down at number 9. Why? Why are they not higher?
You're a top 10 team, so let's not get too upset. And I bumped them up several spots. I just think it's a little bit of a press pause or a hold to see if they're truly going to be one of the top teams in the league. The Dolphins, I'm not breaking any news here. This is barely an NFL team, a team that showed up unprepared, talent poor, got punched in the mouth and didn't get up. So the Ravens, to their credit, they put down almost a 60 burger on them. But I want to see what they do going forward. And by the way, they have the Cardinals in their building next week, so it's probably going to be a lot of hype rolling into a great Week 3 matchup at Arrowhead. Flex that one to Sunday night. Too early to flex.
Oh, good looking forward there, Dan Hanzus.
It is too early to flex.
Should they be higher than 9?
Should they be higher than 9? I think you're about right with that. I completely agree with you about the Miami assessment. We don't really know. I don't think the Patriots go into Miami and have such a huge margin of victory because they don't really need to. I think that the Ravens were having a little bit of fun with this. They were just kind of, letting them say, like, not bad for a running back, right? Like, they were just airing it out and enjoying playing the game last week. And for me, it's still a big question of, where's their pressure? Where's the defensive pressure going to come from that front? They have great defensive backs, but the front, that's going to be a bigger problem against different teams that don't have this low-quality offensive line and a lot of questions at quarterback.
Are you with me, Mike?
How about this? Off script, quick ad lib. Yeah. Dolphins of 2019, worst team of all time.
We got
2 0-16 teams. We got the Browns and the Lions, 0-16 teams. Could this end up being the worst of those 3 teams?
Can I tell you one thing beforehand?
Yeah.
Before every season, I do win totals, projected win totals for every team. In 15 seasons, I have never had a lower projected win total leading into a season than I do for the Dolphins this year.
That's the real. What's the feel say? The real says worst team ever.
I don't know. That's fine. No,
I feel.
They're right up there. The Browns hung around in a lot of those games
what I mean.
A couple years ago.
The Lions should have won one.
Yeah, their quarterback ran out of the back of the end zone
I
once.
hate the Lions.
Yeah, I don't want to do that to you. This could be the worst team ever.
All right, there we go.
Sorry,
let's get to Power Moves presented by Energizer. We get a look here at your power rankings 9 through 16, Dan. And as you see, the Ravens there at 9, we just discussed them. Packers and Bears back-to-back. I don't like that, but we'll get to that in a minute. Now you got the Bears ahead of the Chargers after getting completely demolished offensively and showing no life. Meanwhile, Chargers.
This is coming.
You're coming after his bag. You're coming after his bag.
By the way, great game-winning touchdown call in Week 1.
Thank you.
You killed it.
I appreciate that.
You had to get the touchdown call and then straight into Chargers win.
It's game over, right? People forget no longer kick the extra point in overtime, so
it's
the
over.
Game is now over. It is. Thank goodness they did that, by the way. All right, so let's focus on number 11 and number 14. Which team are you most concerned about moving forward? Because you know what that 0-2 start looks like. Is it the Bears going to the Broncos, or is it the Steelers who are playing that one team coming up here?
Yeah, exactly. I think
you mean the Seahawks? Got
exactly right.
Nailed it. The Bears are a little bit worrisome to me right now, and it's about. I don't want to pile on Mitchell Trubisky because a lot of people are doing that right now. But it's fair to wonder. It's fair to wonder after an offseason where the Bears put out this narrative, led by their head coach, by the way, Matt Nagy, that kicker was the only possible thing that could hold them back from reclaiming a rightful place as Super Bowl champions, then maybe your quarterback is not the guy to take you to the promised land. Again, I'm not counting Trubisky out, but he had some bad moments last year, even during a quote-unquote breakout season, and he was just kind of a mess.
What quarterback took the Bears to the last Miami Super Bowl?
Rex Grossman.
Yeah, okay.
Is he a Rex Grossman, or is he name of not Jim McMahon? He wasn't a great.
I think Bear fans would take more Kyle Orton than Rex Grossman.
Give us a little
even.
Orton.
A little more timely touchdown here and there, limit the turnovers.
What is Trubisky's ceiling? I think that's one of the big questions.
I think it's just.
I'm going to say standard 8 feet.
Just enough to get that defense, which is an elite defense, to look a little better going forward. I'm less worried about the Bears. I'm far more concerned about the Steelers, who couldn't get it going kind of at all on offense. We didn't see even like little flashes of what we thought we were going to see. I know it's the Patriots. I know they were away. Now they get to play at home. Michael Fabiano will always tell you about the home and road splits for Ben Roethlisberger. You know that I don't abide by that as much. But hosting the Seahawks, we're going to see a little bit different because the Seahawks will allow teams to run on them a little more than we saw the Patriots do. So establishing the run with James Conner could potentially lead to better passing situations. So I'm concerned about the Steelers because I didn't see tons of sparks, but we'll have to see. I'm reserving my thoughts for this week against the Seahawks.
I'm going to make the always timely golf reference here and say a lot of times if you have nightmares about or you've played poorly on a certain golf course, it's just hard to play there. It's
like all of them?
You're always thinking about all the bad things that are going to happen. That's the Steelers at Foxborough. You don't go and say, "Oh, you know what? This is the time." Now you're like, "Man, this place is just terrible."
And it's carried over generations now, going back to 2001. Nothing ever changes.
Nothing changes. All right, let's get to the Cleveland Browns-Titans contest, and boy, did that get sideways in a hurry.
By the way, look at this bunny.
Yeah.
I like the bunny.
Still going.
I like the bunny.
Rolling right. They're going to screen it to Henry. Man is blocked in the flat. A lot of room. 30, 40, 50, 40, 30, 20, 10, 5, end zone.
Yes.
No flags on the field. 75 yards. Touchdown, Titans. Derrick Henry from Marcus Mariota.
That is the incomparable Mike Keith on the call there for the Titans. Been doing it a while. One of the best play-by-play guys in the business. That brings us to Power Moves, presented by Energizer. The Titans with your biggest move of the week, up 7 spots to number 13. Dan Hanzus.
Now, Around the NFL podcast fans know that I have an issue with Titans fans. Titans fans have an issue with me. But this
What
shows,
is it?
they're an eternal
hate
97
Nashville?
team with no juice.
Okay.
What made this kind of exciting for me watching them is this team had some swagger. And Delaney Walker, who was not around last year for basically the whole season, you saw what a big difference he made on that offense, how much he helped Marcus Mariota. And speaking of that swagger, or swag as the kids say, after the game, do the kids even say that anymore? I think they've moved on already
Why
from
not?
that.
Some of the kids do.
After the game, he's out in front of the media saying you don't believe in us, and they are who we thought they were about the Browns. Some juice around the Titans, and I like that. And they have some talent on both sides of the ball.
When the Chargers played the Titans in London last year, it was right after the injury to Delaney Walker, and we were talking with their broadcast team, including Mike Keith, and he made a great point, and that is the Titans not only lost one of the best receiving tight ends in the league, but they lost their second best offensive lineman, and it was going to be a crushing blow. So having him back, not only, especially with the absence of Taylor Lewan, to get back what that team thought is their second best blocker on the team was a huge get, and we'll see whether or not it carries over.
And can we talk about the 18 penalties that the Browns committed?
Oh, yeah. You want to lean on the Browns because they slipped. They certainly slipped down the rankings.
I think that also means that the Titans were doing some things to kind of get in their head, like some good technique and stay disciplined. You talked about Delaney Walker. Well, new play caller Arthur Smith, their new offensive coordinator. Well, that's where he came from, is tight end coaching. So that's what kind of his proficiency is. So it wasn't super surprising that Walker played such a huge role, considering his proficiency before and their kind of relationship before. But look, they got in their heads and they stayed there. They are taking up permanent space in the Browns' head.
And the Browns fans came after me. In the power rankings, I wrote that after all the hype heading into the season, things changed quickly. Your fans booing you off the field at halftime. I had some angry Browns fans saying, you don't know what you're talking about. They were booing the officials. All right, bro, wherever you want to think this anger from the fans are coming from, they're booing that team for laying a massive egg, and now they got a Monday night game against the Jets, which I can't figure out for the life of me which version of the Browns shows up, because there are bad games, and then there are harbingers of doom type games, and I don't know where to fall in the Browns right now.
So think about what our two big questions were going into the season for the Browns, right? One, offensive line. That looked terrible.
Awful.
Two,
kicky people.
You've got a
left tackle,
first-time
not
head
great.
coach. And whether or not, with all those personalities, strong personalities, a ton of, pardon the pun, but barking away from the field, whether it's a fancy GQ spread and some great outfits calling out Daniel Jones, or it's just the outspoken personalities on that team, how would Freddie Kitchens be able to absorb all of that? And I would say 18 penalties is a reflection that maybe he can't, or maybe he's going to need to figure that out to lay down some law, and I shouldn't say lay down some law, but to at least tighten things up, get some structure back, because certainly they have the talent. But I would say the big concern is the two things that were the glaring red flags certainly showed themselves in week one.
They got to clean it up on first down on both sides of the ball. The first down situation on defense, they gave up over 8.5 yards per play on first down. You're just asking for trouble on second and third. You're just stay on the field. You're going to get a first down almost every first down. That's a really tough hill to climb back up from. But I do think there were some positive notes here, and I do think we see better Baker Mayfield. You got to get that line kind of in place. You got to get the chemistry forming between him and especially Odell Beckham Jr. There are positive things that will happen in this, and Nick Chubb was kind of a bright spot. And in general, they averaged over 5.1 yards per carry, just rushing the ball. So when the O-line gets a little bit better, I think there's bright spots, and I do think they're going to I would say maybe it's going to be good this week for you.
Here, a look at our man, Dan Hanzus' power rankings. You get them all at NFL.com. And 17 through 24. The Bills with that remarkable victory after it seemed like they had absolutely nothing going, Dan, for quite some time. But let's focus on two teams that were in that. Number 20, the Raiders, and number 23, the Falcons. The Falcons, a lot of people were high on going into this season.
I was one of them.
You were one of them. There's still plenty of time. 0-1, not that big of a deal. The Raiders, 1-0 after knocking off the Broncos at Oakland Alameda Coliseum. Bigger surprise for you that the Raiders won or that the Falcons lost? Go ahead.
Biggest surprise, you going 1-0 over 1-0, changing the game
in
a lot of ways.
Well, it's a number.
Yeah.
You know, it's a
you
zero.
nailed it. That's the way to do it. That's a professional way
I guess
to do
so,
it.
right?
The Raiders, to me, really shocked me with their proficiency and just how much of a well-oiled machine they were. And John Gruden's been a punching bag. You could argue rightfully
Deservedly
so.
so.
Yeah, for some of his actions and his strategy since taking that $100 million deal. But you got to give Gruden credit for having this team ready to go in week one with all the drama swirling around them with Antonio
What
Brown.
drama?
And what a nightmare
Never heard of him.
that was for them to show up and just take it to a division rival. They dominated that game start to finish.
You know, one thing in the presser that I do believe now, kind of watching the game, they're like, well, Antonio Brown was really never here, so we were really used to playing without him. So that after, you know, obviously 2020 vision behind's way better, but like ultimately they didn't really plan for having him, so it wasn't that big of a huge distraction as if they had designed the entire offense around him and then just plucked him out. So that was an interesting point.
And you look at how they did it. And granted, it's someone that I had a chance to see the last 2 years, but Tyrell Williams is wildly underrated. I mean, this is someone with top end speed. He got his hands right going into last season. That was what kind of had plagued him through 2017. Phillip Rivers didn't trust him as much. And then you see what he can do. He can take the top off of a defense, and we don't see Derek Carr try to push the ball downfield. They did that with him. Their tackles blocked, Bradley Chubb and Von Miller. I mean, that Derek Carr was kept clean, and it wasn't because he was just like snap, and getting rid of the ball, but actually stood, climbed the pocket. He played great.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be, you know, an interesting precursor to something changing in Oakland offensively.
And I just want to throw it out there that Raiders fans deserve so much credit. Like, there's a lot of scenarios where the situation that they're playing in, that fans would not be going to that building, and it would be ugly. There'd be signs up. There was madness at the Black Hole and such a great vibe, and it kind of breaks your heart that they don't get to watch this team after this year. But I think that home field advantage is going to be really good for them this year. It's going to be crazier in a primetime scenario like Monday night. But in general, I think the Raiders are frisky, especially in their building.
I'm going to have you take the other side of that question, the Falcons and the disappointment in the way they came out and played.
Well, first and foremost, you saw none of the things that make Matt Ryan great. You didn't see the deep passes and the connections he had. Like, none. That's where he thrives. He couldn't get those going. They couldn't get the run game established. On the other side, their defense was just allowing Dalvin Cook to gash them with rushes of, like, tons of deep rushes over and over again, eating up the time. There's no points scored in the first half. Like, it just was a big hole that they had to come out of, and then they didn't have an answer to it. So I was really concerned mostly about that defense from kind of top to bottom. Who's going to rush the passer? Like, what are we going to do here? And then getting Keanu Neal and Deion Jones back, you would think they would stop the run to the tune of at least 3 yards per rush. No, like, let's just give him 12. Go for it.
It was just a game lost in the trenches because the defense was a mess. Offensive line, it's a reminder how you could pour a ton of draft capital into offensive line, but you don't know if your line's actually better until they start playing. And then Chris Lindstrom, one of the first-round picks, he has a bad injury, and they lose him.
That was sort of, I hate the word, but I'll say it. The narrative going into the season was, hey, way to go Falcons. You invested 2 first-round picks in offensive linemen. It's the toughest position to fill in the league. Right. That's why the Houston Texans gave up 2 number 1s for Laramie Tunsil, because they know how hard it is to find.
That'll probably get better. Let's hope. 6 sacks.
He did okay. He gave up just 1.
It was a bad
but
one.
all right, so final 8, our bottom quarter of the 1 through 32 power rankings presented by Energizer. And Dan, you have the Broncos at 25, the Dolphins at 32. No surprise there, but let's focus on a couple of the teams in the big town, the Big Apple, New York City. Both start with losses. I don't know which one was more gut-wrenching, maybe the hopelessness of the Giants or a 16-0 lead that disappeared for the Jets. Why don't we get into, I guess, start with the Jets. They're your team, and kind of what you saw there.
I mean, even as a Jets fan, I would say that way more gut-wrenching because the Giants were outclassed. And when they're outclassed, they're going to get beat bad, and you move on and you look ahead to the future with Danny Dimes in New York. But with the Jets, this is a game they had to have, and you look at their schedule, you know it tightens up over the next 4 weeks. When you have a 16-0 lead and you spend all this money and all these resources to improve the offense, and you just need them to make a couple plays. Here's the stat that really kills you if you're Adam Gase.
Kill me with stats.
1.0 yards per play on plays that did not go to Jamison Crowder or Le'Veon Bell. The offense just laid a huge egg, and the defense, once C.J. Mosley went out with a groin injury, could not stop the bleeding. It was a highly disheartening loss, and the Monday Night Football will be a big test for them.
So, and then you come out of this one really banged up. Quincy Enunwa just now recently found out today that his neck is injured, so they're going to lose him for the rest of the season. Is C.J. Mosley okay? Because he left the game. Is Quinnen Williams okay? He left the game. So you're getting more banged up in a game where you had a lead. You could have potentially been 1-0 starting this like kind of really tough slate. I don't know. It's very dicey, especially with their cornerbacks.
You know, and even if they win that game, you still have all those same concerns, right?
Right.
But when it comes to the Giants, you just wonder, is there any hope? Do you believe this could be a growth year?
They always lose to the Cowboys week 1.
Well, no, but
that's a thing.
Eli used to hammer the Cowboys in Dallas,
to.
right?
But not anymore.
Those were the
Eli.
salad days.
Yeah,
It feels like that week 1 was the Giants season in miniature. Saquon Barkley's going to pile up a ton of fantasy points. Evan Ingram is going to become a star at tight end. Eli's going to have moments where he looks okay and then moments where he looks like he should be in old age home. The defense is going to give up a ton of yardage because they don't have a lot of talent there. And looming over everything is Daniel Jones. And when does he showed up in that game for a few snaps, when does he take over the reins and really set this franchise on the next step, which everyone's just basically waiting at this point?
I'm guessing it's probably when Golden Tate returns, because that nice slot outlet would be a really good thing to have added to Saquon Barkley. And the O-line projects to do a little bit better. But again, I'm not as down on the Giants as maybe you are in this situation, but I don't think it's going to be it's going to be a tough season, but I don't know if it's going to be that bad. I don't think it's hapless,
They're just in transition
hopeless.
as a franchise, I think. And
but they've got
To
a
expect
quarterback.
them to win games might be asking a lot.
6-10 team.
To expect them to
6
win
and 10.
games.
6-10, 5-11.
That's all radio. How about teams that we, the three of us collectively, are worried about? Get us started, Dan.
Jaguars for me, and I love Gardner Minshew. Am I saying it right?
Minshew.
That's right, yeah, Gardner Minshew.
Former sixth round pick who really did ball out once Nick Foles got hurt. But what you're asking a rookie 6th round pick to do is way too much. It's way too big of an ask. And really the biggest disappointment for me beyond Nick Foles' injury was how the defense, which has a ton of big name players that we were told all summer we're going to get back to the 2017 ways, just got whooped on. It was just a boat race.
But the Chiefs whooped on them, right?
It was the Chiefs, and that's important to keep in mind. But put up a fight in your building in week 1, and that was
They
highly
fought,
disheartening.
and then they fought, and then they got a bunch of
Jack
penalties.
got a little loose
right,
with it,
so,
yeah.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah, not a good look.
To me,
Not the
it's-
good fight.
Didn't we just say this last week, when Maurice Jones-Drew was with us? If Nick Foles is your starting quarterback, you better have a backup because the guy's never made it through a season. He is routinely injured. He goes out and injures his clavicle in week 1, is not going to be back, if back at all this season, and their backup is out of Wazoo, Gardner Minshew, who looked great, but you got to be better planned. If you feel like you have a Super Bowl capable roster, especially defensively, how do you not have a guy behind Foles?
No, it was bad roster planning, and I'm worried about MJD's Super Bowl pick.
A little bit.
Let me just
put
say
the
that as
Jaguars and the
well.
Rams in there.
Yes.
There you go. Cynthia, team you're worried about.
I brought it up before, and we're bringing it up again here, the Atlanta Falcons. I expected to see a much different team come out against the Vikings. I thought, especially when it came to defensive front, I know you're really high on the Vikings, but I still have no idea what to make of their O-line, and we talk about this all of the time. Their O-line, they looked awesome this last game. You know why? Because there was no pressure coming their way. So this is going to be a consistent problem, and if the Falcons are going to shore this up, they've got to stop the run. They've got to bring some pressure. Their defense really needs to set themselves up for a better offensive series for Matt Ryan and Julio Jones. They could not connect on deep passes. There was short stuff was not working out. So I'm very concerned about the Falcons going forward.
I'll go with the Broncos. Just you look at the division. You have the Chiefs that were
For
able
sure.
to, again, run roughshod over what looks on paper to be a pretty darn good Jacksonville defense. The Chargers get a win in week 1. We think those two will be battling. And now, they say a win is worth 1.5 when it's in division, and a lot of folks picked the Raiders to finish last in that division, thought the Broncos could be a surprise team. Granted, Monday night, Black Hole, Raiders, not the easiest of environments, but it's more of what happened in that game. The fact that Von Miller and Bradley Chubb weren't able to get to a quarterback who was pressured with the worst left tackle in the league last year in Colton Miller, and then you have a team that couldn't sack the quarterback, and Cleveland Farrell's hurrying, getting hits, sacking the quarterback. They were getting pressure on Joe Flacco. You lose Jawan James. You have issues with Garrett Bowles still. Like that, to me, in this division, especially going up against the NFC South this year, I should say the AFC South this year, which I think is a solid top-to-bottom, kind of division, That does not bode well to lose this opener against that team.
Another new play caller, Dante Scarnecchia. We don't know what he's going to be about for this Broncos offense. So you've got Joe Flacco, who didn't look like he had a huge command of the offense
not
in his
Dante.
best.
Scran.
Yes, exactly.
Sorry, Scrangarello.
That's okay.
That's whatever. Long story. That's a different O-line coach. You know, it's stuck in my head.
And their O-line coach was supposed to do great things, and we didn't see it.
And it didn't work out. That's what I
said. That shot, the ESPN shot at the end of that game, Elway on the sideline, and he gets it right in the mug, and he has this look like, what's going on? Joe Flacco is a statue. My defense cannot get any pass rush, and that was supposed to be the heart of this team. Not a good start.
And they have the Bears at home next week, and this is where
2-0-1 teams.
Yeah, well, one's going to leave with 1-0.
And this one from that dude.
Snowflake. Okay, we know where this is going.
How the Bills and Colts better than the Niners? Okay, you got a dumbass. Don't understand how dumb you have to be to do that. And that is, okay, so now I got Garoppolo.
It's not
so his name must be Lou, and he's a big Garoppolo fan.
So, like Levin Garoppolo.
Can I just say that, all right, whatever, right back at you,
Colts are 0-1.
But I also want to say that Jimmy Garoppolo did not look good in week 1. I thought he was shaky as hell, and he throws a pick six. And listen, I'm getting a dirty mouth. I'm so fired up right now, Money. I just think keep an eye on Jimmy Garoppolo if he's ready for this. Because he's only started like 12 games, and I still have not seen a great quarterback.
There is a flip side to that, though, and that is that Nick Bosa was injured throughout the preseason, comes into that game, and he was a wrecking machine.
I have the NFC
at
West
least there's that.
overall is bringing the most defensive pressures, like as an entire division.
Next tweet. And clean up your act here,
HE double hockey
Right.
sticks.
Matt Jones.
The team we tied with is 3 spots ahead. Your rankings continue to suck. First, it's Chandler Jones on the top 100, and now this.
I like that because that shows he hated the week 1 rankings as well. It's just all tying together. He's upset that a team
that the Cardinals end up rallying from what looked to be an insurmountable lead by the Lions. So maybe they should have the upper hand on the Lions because the Lions were the ones that remembered how to lie.
You don't get the nickname lie downs for nothing.
If you really want to split hairs here, the Lions were way better for 3.5 quarters.
Okay.
So if I need a tiebreaker, am I going to go with the team that was really good for 3.5 quarters or the team that was good for 12 minutes?
I just like to point out that we're arguing over Team 31 versus Team 28. Like that's the hot take that you now have to address.
That's my life now. This is
last
what I've
one, and then we're getting out of here. Wow, a threat of physical violence.
That shouldn't be allowed.
Open hand slap. I'm gonna do you like they did Stossel, Pittsburgh.
Lordom of Philly. Lordom of Philly.
Sorry.
So that's a threat of physical violence over a NFL.com
no threats.
Power rankings article.
You know what? I get a bunch of go back to the kitchen. So at least you didn't get that.
Hey, guess what? Culinary arts is widely
I love the
respected
kitchen.
these days.
I'm actually a really good cook. I'm a great cook.
Yes, I will not even give that man the dignity of an answer.